my chance, to share my opinion, my feelings, my thoughts on the hiring that the Wild chose to do for their head coaching position. Now, if you listen to the show on a regular basis, you know that my preferred candidate was in fact John Torchetti, the guy who took over for Mike Yeo halfway through the season. My vote was I wanted us to re-sign him for a 1 to 2 year contract and give him at least one season at the helm, you know, to prove if he's the guy that can do the job or not. He turned things around, did what we had to do to get into the playoffs this last year, and I really liked his character, and I really liked his attitude, just the identity that he brought to the team. And while it wasn't anything, too outstanding or stellar, it was at least respectable to the point that you deserve a fair shot, in my opinion. And of course, you always hold out the exception for, well, if someone becomes available who is just, too good to be true, extremely, qualified, and just too good to pass up, then we gotta defer to that person if they're interested. And long story short, that's actually what the organization is trying to play off to the fan base here in Minnesota that happened. Was that Torchetti was a finalist for the spot, but when the Anaheim Ducks, the winners of the Pacific Division, the number one seed, in the one of two number one seeds on the western side of the playoffs, they lost in the first round in 7 games to the other wild card team, the Nashville Predators. Upon the results of that series, they fired their then, in last several years, head coach, Bruce Boudreau. That is the guy, as I mentioned earlier, that the Minnesota Wild decided was their guy. This is, of everyone that we could have, this is the right hire. This is the right guy. This should turn things around for the team here in the state of hockey. He's just, Torchetti was a worthy candidate, but this Boudreau guy, he's the bee's knees. It's like he's like Tom Thibodeau. Like, you see what the Wolves did with Tom Thibodeau? Like, he's like that. And so with that being the official message carried out both from the franchise and then trickled down through the vast majority of the sports media here in Minnesota, most hockey fans are pretty happy about the state of the Wild as far as what happened with the head coaching position. Not yours truly. Oh no. You heard me rant weeks ago on the hiring of Tom Thibodeau, when that was my number 2 guy, and I'm totally cool with the hire, and I get it. But I'm not going to rehash most of my issues with that. But the Thibodeau hire is a much better hire than the Boudreau hire, and they are not in any ways the same or similar or anything. The only thing that they have in common is that they will be new first-year head coaches on one of the big 4 major professional sports franchise teams here in the state of Minnesota. That is the only thing that these 2 hires have in common. So where should we start? Should we start why Thibodeau was a better hire, or should we start with why Boudreau is not a good hire? I think let's start with the Thibodeau angle first to set it up so that by the time we get to Boudreau, we've already got a nice deep understanding kind of where we're going with this. Now, my number one above all issue where Thibodeau wasn't my number one guy, he was number two behind Luke Walton, is the championship factor. I did not want the Wolves to settle for the direction of the franchise to just be, we just want to get back in the playoffs on a yearly basis, maybe get to the second round of the conference finals every rare once in a while if we're lucky, and that's it. That's what we want. That's what we're going for. That's what I felt the settling and the compromise was in hiring Thibodeau. Was you kind of, you were kind of saying in a way, we really don't want to or strive to or expect to ever, be an NBA Finals team, 2-3 out of 5 years, and win a championship once or twice. We just want to get in the playoffs every year, maybe win a series every once in a while, and that's it. See, as a fan of the Wolves franchise since day one, that's just not good enough for me. I don't want that. I want let's go big all the time, or let's not go at all. Like, do what we have to do to bring a championship here, to legitimize this franchise the way that the Golden State Warriors did last year. People forget that franchise was one of the 5 to 8 joke teams of the NBA for forever, just until last year when they finally won a championship and became legit. Okay. Other examples would be the Clippers, or what the Mavericks were before Dirk Nowitzki, if you guys can remember that far back. Yes, there was such a time. But so with that being my issue, I do understand from an organizational standpoint where the Thibodeau move is still a good hire because of where you're coming from. Okay? And this plays large into my issue with the Wild hiring Boudreau. Okay? The T-Wolves are coming from, I believe, 13 consecutive years now of not being in the playoffs, being one of the 10 worst teams in all of basketball for almost a decade and a half. And so to bring in a guy who, while he doesn't have, any championship experience as a head coach of, being able to win on big stages, he does have a proven track record in history of being able to take over a head coaching position on a team that is not in the playoffs, that's, a lottery team, and immediately make them 15 to 20 wins better because they've got some young talent and they're, a playoff team for the rest of his tenure. They couldn't ever get over that, that final hump to win a title. A lot of people could attribute that more to Derrick Rose's not being healthy very often than Thibodeau's lack of coaching ability, and I couldn't argue against that, for the record. And I like Thibodeau, for the record. But you can see, when looking at it that way, how it is you are bringing in a positive change for the team and the organization, and that things are going to be different than they have been, and in a better way. Missing the playoffs 13 years in a row sucks. Being able to feel like by bringing in this coach and having the current young talent that we do, in addition to whatever else, other moves we can make, draft picks, free agency, and trades, that this team for no reason shouldn't make the playoffs and maybe even get to a conference finals multiple times in the next 3 to 10 years. That's a huge difference. That is a big leap forward in the right direction. So that's where it's the Thibodeau hire for the Wolves is still a really good, sensible hire. There's obvious improvement for the team and the fan base to look forward to. This is where I do not approve of the Bruce Boudreau hire for the Minnesota Wild at all. I would veto this coaching hire with my 100% Thor hammer stamp of disapproval if the Wild organization gave me one. But they don't. I have a microphone and a podcast, so that's what I use. But I could not be more unhappy with this hire. And the reason builds off of why the Thibodeau move does sit good with me, as I just explained to you. That's why I explained that to you. It's obvious and it's visible how things are going to be different and better than what they've been in both in the immediate future and for the foreseeable years to come. Someone explain to me how going from a team, based off of your coaching hirings and firings, you've been a team that has made the playoffs almost every year, but, with uncertainty. You've had to scramble, scratch and claw, fight your way in. It's never been, you haven't been comfortably getting into the playoffs, but you've been getting into the playoffs on a regular basis. And when in said playoffs, you always lose in the first or second round. Something you do win a series every once in a while, but you can't get to those conference finals. And the teams that you are striving to leapfrog and be better than in the West, to get past that second round in the playoffs, are teams like the Stars and the Blackhawks primarily, and the St. Louis Blues, and the Anaheim Ducks and the Los Angeles Kings. So when someone doesn't work out and is deemed not good enough by one of your competitors above you that you're striving to surpass, why would you jump on the opportunity to hire their garbage as your savior? Why did Boudreau get fired from Anaheim? They've been one of the best teams in hockey every year for the past several years, at least from a wins-loss regular season record standpoint. Well, the reason that he got fired from there is because he can't win in the playoffs. Every first round or every second round, maybe every once in a while he'll get to a conference finals, but every first or second round he's got Washington Capitals syndrome, which we'll talk about in just a little bit here too before we close out with hockey talk. Boudreau can coach a team through the regular season with a top 3 record in their division, maybe even winning their division. He has proven that as a head coach he can do that on a regular basis. So boom, he can get his team to the playoffs on a regular basis. The Wild have, for the past 4 or 5 years, been getting to the playoffs on a regular basis. So there's nothing different there, However, with the Anaheim Ducks, he almost always struggled to get them out of the first or second round. With the Wild's previous coaches, what happened in the playoffs? They would struggle to get out of the first and second round. So again, nothing's different. Are you really telling me that the only difference that we signed up for in our coaching hiring is a better regular season on a regular basis, where we won't have to go through such long, slumps throughout seasons, or they won't be quite as bad when they happen? But make no mistake, come playoff time, don't expect to be competing for the Stanley Cup ever. You be happy having a good team to watch 41 nights out of the year here in Minnesota for your regular season games, and then you come cheer whatever playoff games we're lucky enough to play. And you'll be guaranteed at least one